I am somebody who absolutely adores freedom. I've always had big dreams. Anything that you put your mind to, you will achieve.
Talk to me a little bit more about the investment banking. How does a woman feel in an environment which is so male dominated?
I had so many people trying to keep me down and put into a box as such. No. I deserve more. If they could do it, I can do it. I just need to learn how they're doing it. You know, I was constantly working and that was my life. I was at my breaking point already. During this time, I was in an abusive relationship.
How did you even cope with that as well as the stress at work?
Honestly, I don't actually know. It felt like my whole world had crumbled to a point where I now get to rebuild it in my own way.
One of the biggest adversities you've faced as a business owner?
Before I even launched, I was taken to court by Robbie Williams. UPS lost £30,000 of my stock.
No.
All of my savings from investment banking.
How much money had you lost?
In totality, nearly £100,000.
Hello and welcome to this week's Polly Means Business podcast. I'm here joined by Karly Aber, the business mentor, investor and board advisor who's really going to open up and let us know everything about how she's got to where she is today and the adversity she's faced to become the woman she is. Hi Karly, how are you today?
Hello, I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So is this your first podcast?
No, many podcasts in.
Many podcasts in. Okay, great. And just talk to me a little bit about, obviously, we know that you're into investments. We know that you are a business mentor. Just tell me a little bit about what's behind the Karly Aber approach and what makes you so different.
I love this question. I am somebody who absolutely adores freedom. I am the rule breaker. I like to do things my own way. I am highly creative and I really do have such a strong mission to make an impact in the world in my own unique way. And for me, the journey that I've been on to get to where I am today, it's really about empowering other women to know that there is such a big world out there and anything is possible. And I came from an investment banking background, which is radically different. My life has completely transformed to the point of which I am completely unrecognizable to who I was, a decade ago. And I am really trying to show women in the world that the cards that you've been dealt, you can completely change the cards that you've been dealt at any given point. And it really does light me up in the world to do things my own way and to show women that there is so much more to life when you truly live in alignment and have that inner freedom as well as external freedom.
I totally agree with that. And I think doing the inner work really helps to project with the outside. Everything to do with when you're working on the inside, I think everything starts to come into play. Everything comes into alignment. You get all the synchronicities and the world just seems to be snapping its fingers at you. Yeah, which is great. Talk to me a little bit more about the investment banking. So is this like the birth of Karly, like where everything started? And obviously I know we start on those journeys and sometimes the tough parts actually lead us to the good parts. So let's talk a bit about that.
I wasn't somebody that massively enjoyed school. I didn't go to university, but I went on work experience into this law firm and it was my first ever, opportunity to be in a corporate world. I didn't really know much about the corporate world before that. And I remember I was just on work experience for the summer and the minute I stepped foot, it was in Canary Wharf, and I stepped foot into this big grand building and I saw these women like walking around with, their Louis
The Samantha Jones.
Exactly, exactly that.
Power dressing.
Power dresses, their hair just, they looked so beautiful, well presented. They spoke so articulately and they had these big offices and I would just walk around in awe of these women.
Sure.
And I would just sit at this desk, I was in college at the time. And so on work experience, just training, most of the time doing filings, really basic things. And I remember I would just sit at this desk and stare at the women and just think, I'm going to be one of you one day. I just saw this vision of, what I thought success was at that time.
Sure.
It's changed over the years. And at that point, I just realized something just activated within me, that I could be one of these women these days. And I remember I went home to my mum and I was like, Mum, I'm going to be a solicitor. And she was like, okay. And I just knew in me that, obviously I'm not a solicitor today, but big dreams. I've always had big dreams. And my mum said to me, you can be anything that you want to be. Anything that you put your mind to, you will achieve.
That is so important for parents to be like that as well and not give us those ceilings.
Yes. And it was from that point, and that's always threaded through everything that I've done today. I always have my mum's voice in the back of my mind. A very young child who hated school, who never did homework or studying. I
can't believe that of you either, because you're so focused.
It's just completely different worlds.
Yeah.
And I just didn't care, and it was at that point that something shifted within me from a very young age, that I just saw myself as this older version of me before, like many, many years ahead. And when I think about it now, I'm like, that is what visualizing, or whatever you want to call it, would be at this point, me sitting at that desk looking at my future life. But I just didn't know those concepts back then. And that was where it all began. And then from there, I just became somebody who, don't get me wrong, I wasn't always on work at work every single day on time. I wasn't how I am today, but it has been a journey to get there step by step. And I then found my way into investment banking off the back of there, just through, in all honesty, networking. I truly believe it's, not just what you know, it's who you know as well.
Absolutely.
My network has been...
me and you met.
Exactly that. And my network has been fundamental to every part of my business. And I got into investment banking. I was temping around all of the biggest banks, and I never wanted a permanent job. I just wanted to get as much experience as I ever could, working for all different types of people in the investment banking world. And I just absolutely loved people. And I loved being in different environments. I loved like the just the variety of it.
The fast-pacedness.
I just loved the fact I was just in my prime. I just felt really at home.
You were Wolf of Wall Street time. That was your era. But how does like, just going back to that, how does a woman feel in an environment which is so male dominated? How did that sort of slowly, eat away at your, the female ego? Was there any walls that you came up against working in that environment?
I think the biggest challenge for me within the environment was that I was always told, you're too young.
Okay. I've been told this before.
All the time, you're too young, you need more experience.
Yeah.
And that whenever I went for a pay rise, whenever I was wanting to excel in my career and climb the ladder, I had so many people trying to keep me down and put into a box as such, trying to managers. And I really struggled with the fact that I was looking at other male colleagues who would just play big. They'd know maybe how to do three things on a CV, and they're applying for the job. And they're like, I'm going to get the job. And they're hopping between jobs, and they're, if someone's saying, if a boss was saying to them, this is your pay, they're like, no, I deserve more. I'm not settling on this. And they would really champion themselves. And for me, I just saw that as that wasn't me. No. I was not that person at all. I speak very confidently now, but I wasn't a confident person. Really struggled to look people in the eyes, really didn't value myself or really know my own worth at that time. and for many, many years. And so I saw all of the men in the investment banking world, and I was like, wow. And I almost saw it as inspirational, as in, you know, if I could just have a piece of that, or, you know, how do you get to be like that? So as much as it is highly frustrating, you know, when you see men that are, you know, working that way and really not taking no for an answer and earning more and, you know, really thriving in that sense, it really up-leveled me quickly to what was available to me. And so I never saw it as it's unfair. I saw it as, well, if they could do it, I can do it. I just need to learn how they're doing it.
Yeah. And also, why is that not available to us? And how do we get to that point? So obviously we know you're not working in investment banking anymore, and that corporate side of Karly has been, you know, popped to bed now. But how did you, you know, what pivotal moment did you get, you know, how did you get to the point where you decided to leave the corporate side?
I got to a point where I was honestly really fed up with trading time for money, being highly stressed, and at the brink of, you know, burning out multiple times. I would sacrifice my own personal life, saying no to family and friends. You know, I was constantly working.
Yeah.
And that was my life. It was work, work, work. And I realized that I was climbing this corporate ladder for what?
Yeah.
Because I lived in a really beautiful place. I was, you know, highly materialistic back then. And that for me was, I was really thinking about, you know, what is this all for? What am I doing this all for? And, you know, at that point of my life, I was out partying, I was out drinking, you know, and no purpose, not feeling fulfilled.
Yeah.
And
the rat race that everyone's in.
Absolutely. And just stuck on this hamster wheel whereby I just felt like I was constantly going at such a fast pace, and I couldn't
But
almost...
what for? Yeah.
Exactly that, and couldn't keep up.
That feeling's horrible. You go to bed at night feeling like you're so exhausted, you've given so much to everybody, and your mind is racing and your eyes snap open in the morning and it's back to work again. And then those moments, those glimmers of time that you have that are precious moments that we should be sharing, enjoying, doing those wholesome, wonderful things that actually fill our cup back up. Sometimes we can use those times to then do things that are quite negative to us. You know, alcohol and partying and letting loose. People are like, oh, she's all right, she's letting her hair down. Actually, it's a form of negative self-worth. And I think it's really important that is addressed within, and I guess in the corporate world, that's the norm, you know, go out every night and get absolutely wrecked and then get back to work again the next day. And then the men get a pat on the back for saying, oh, how do you know, I got into work on 2 hours sleep. It's just, but it's not. But talk to me about 2018. I know this year is so important to you, and it's been a massive pivotal moment in your life and career.
And I wore the badge Superwoman so proudly. And I think the biggest mistake that I made was I had this idea of what I thought success was, and I got it, and I was earning incredible money, but what I had to sacrifice to get there, just I realized was not worth it.
Nothing. That's not worth anything.
It's never worth anything. And I think the biggest takeaway that, you know, if I could go back in time, I just wish I could have seen that actually what is true meaningful, what is the true meaning of life, and actually how we feel, the people that we surround ourselves with, you know, the peace and contentment that we have outweighs any, you know, monthly payment or anything that we're going to get paid. And it's just not worth it. And so 2018, you know, if I go back to this point and just to paint a picture, I am working, 12 to 16-hour days. I am working at weekends. I am saying no to absolutely everything that would bring me peace and happiness and enjoyment. The moments that you spend with family and friends, family lunches and dinners. I'm so family orientated. We have such a close knit family who, we all adore and love each other so much, and it's those times that I look back on that I was missing out on such good memories for what? And so I just spent all my time working. I had a business on the side at the time, my very first business. So I was running a side business. And
you were hustling, girl.
Oh, I was hustling like you wouldn't believe.
She was hustling.
I was hustling, and I thought that, that's the way that you did business.
I think there's something in, do you know what? I'll never forget. We're talking about like maybe a bit of fiction, but it does come into play in the real life. But The Devil Wears Prada.
Yes.
And the guy goes, when your personal life goes, absolutely bottoms up, that's when you know that you're doing really well professionally. And I think that's something that we need to get out of our heads, because actually it can feel like that, when you're pounding the pace so hard at work, when you're not doing and it's like, I can't do this. I can't come out for dinners. I've got to work. But actually we can have it all. Yeah. We can do it all, but it's about finding that balance.
And it's having all of the right things.
Sure.
So you can absolutely have it all. I've proven that today. You can have it all.
Yeah.
But you can have it all of the right things.
Yes.
And so 2018, just fast paced, like I couldn't even keep up with myself at all. And it was like every single day I was waking up thinking, I just need to get through today.
Oh, it's awful.
If I can just get through today, We've
all been there.
And I was in line for a promotion. And so I was doing even more than what I had been doing just to try and get this promotion, which I didn't end up getting anyway. Because again, another excuse whereby, there was no one more that deserved that promotion more than me. And I was just doing more, adding on to my plate. And then, so this was the whole of 2018. So going into work was highly stressful. I was at my breaking point already. During this time, I was in an abusive relationship. So I had been for 3.5 years.
How did you even cope with that as well as the stress at work?
Honestly, I don't actually know. I think when you get into a situation whereby the only thing you can do is pull yourself through, that is it. I don't have an answer. And people ask me all the time. And when I look back now, I think, I'm so in awe of that version of myself, like the strength and courage that she had to show up every single day for everybody else, for the people in work, for her team members, for building her own business, for going after her dreams, for being in an abusive relationship, all at the same time, and not telling anybody. Like, I didn't tell a soul, not one person knew.
Do you feel like it's the shame as well of being a strong person at work and then having something which is just so, it's a shameful thing when we think about somebody that's breaking down that strong version of us. You can really carry that around.
Oh my God, the shame kept me in that relationship for the 3.5 years, because very early on in that relationship, I knew. And I just didn't leave.
Yeah. And those red flags that we ignore can be the biggest red flags you'll ever ignore in your life as well.
100%. And it's the red flags, and it's the not having the confidence, not having the self-worth, going into that relationship already not having that. So when people look at me now, they're like, you are so confident, the way that you speak, the way that you show up. And it's really hard for me to paint this picture of who I once was, because I've radically transformed. But that version of me, although I would, be in the office, and when it comes to business, like I could switch it on and be like at the top of my game, really the woman underneath inside, hiding away, was massively self-conscious, massively, just in such a
broken.
Exactly that. Didn't even know what her values were. Didn't really know what was so unique about her, or why someone would even want to be with her. And so when I got into that relationship, and I knew within the first 2 months that it wasn't right, and within the first 3 months it was physical, as in physically abusive, as well as like the emotional and mental side of it, but
which can sometimes be worse.
Oh, it's in all honesty, I could actually handle the physical more than the emotional and mental,
Yeah.
And during that time, you learn coping mechanisms to really keep you safe and
we're
protect.
like this, aren't we, when we work with people? Showtime.
Yeah.
Come on, let's get it together.
And do you know what's really interesting, actually, and exactly how you say, I would leave our apartment. So I'd wake up before him, leave the house, go to the gym, because I was heavily into fitness, always have been. I love fitness. Health and fitness is like my core
escape.
Escapism. It's like it's what feels like home to me. I'm my most confident and powerful self in the gym or working out, and it always has been. You know, I've played sport from a very young age, and so that for me has always been non-negotiable and my saving grace through anything. Like, that is me time. So I'd wake up really early, go to the gym, and then obviously start my day at the office. There would be no opportunity, because I'm always having to save face. I can't go in the office and like break down in front of everybody. I've got a career path. I'm on path of promotion. Like, I've got a team.
Yeah.
And so I would get into the office, and I remember like some days I would just quickly go pop into the disabled toilet when no one could hear me, and just burst into tears, let it all out in the disabled toilet, and sit there, put my makeup back on, get back together, and walk out as if nothing had just happened. And I look back now and I think how like the compassion that I have for me in those moments. Or I remember, I'd be on a train, and I would just sit there, have my headphones in, and just tears would be rolling down my face, because what other time do I get to just cry and like be broken in that moment? Because I had to, I had a business that I was doing on the side. I had a career that, people relied on me. So, and because it was a secret, like nobody knew, I couldn't tell anyone. I was like holding everything in at all times. And so for me, it was like I had to take these little moments throughout my days and weeks that I could just be the vulnerable version of myself.
Just let it out, that tiny little moment of actually...
just relax and just sink into, I am vulnerable, and allow that version of me to come out. And I think the biggest lesson for me in all of this has been that you can be vulnerable and still be successful. You can be vulnerable and still build a business of your dreams. Like, that version of you doesn't have to be hidden.
No.
That version of you is actually your superpower, especially as a woman.
And your unique selling point. Karly, tell me the specific time where, I know we have spoken about this previously on a one-to-one, but when you said that you had your breakdown and you felt like everything came crashing down, talk to me about that pivotal moment or that time.
So my relationship ended. I finally got the courage to walk away. And within that, I thought that was going to be easy. I had in my head, I was like, yes, I'm doing it. And I had been doing this for multiple times. This wasn't the first time I'd left.
Yeah.
This time was just the final time.
It's about not going back, actually.
Exactly.
The leaving can sometimes be easy, but it's the going back, and not allowing that person to do the same little tricks to get you back in again.
And, there was multiple police interventions. I had to completely upheave my whole life. I moved locations so that he couldn't find me. He was stalking and harassing me. There was a whole host of things that came into this. Whilst that was going on, a month after that, a dear friend of mine passed away. And at that point, you know, I already thought that that was my rock bottom. And then my friend passed away. And at that point, I actually truly realized what rock bottom is. And I was in the depths of depression, and it was an awful time. I didn't want to be here. You know, it was a very dark time for me. And shortly after that, I then massively, as you would, anybody that goes through immense amounts of grief, trauma, especially in such a short space of time, on top of, you know, I'm still working in investment banking during all of this. I'm still have a business on the side. It's like, when does it stop? And at that point, my health just completely crashed and I ended up bedbound. At that point, you know, especially more so with my friend passing away, I realized that everything that I was trying to achieve, what I thought was success for me, actually was far from success.
Yeah.
I had created this idea of success of what I had seen, you know, going back to The Devil Wears Prada, you know, what we've been taught what success is.
Yeah.
And at that point, I remember I was just laying in bed, massively grieving my friend, and thinking about how I'd got to this point, you know, bedbound, couldn't lift my head off the pillow. And I realized that actually I had just been living somebody else's dream the whole time. I had been living by what society tells us success is, going after and really chasing money where it felt like my whole world had crumbled to a point where, you know, I now get to rebuild it in my own way. And as much as I make that very lighthearted of I get to rebuild it in my own way, that was a journey that I went on to rebuild, and I went to war for myself. You know, and I say that, I say go to war, and it sounds very harsh and heavy, but I did it in the most graceful, you know, loving, compassionate way of understanding, or really unlearning to relearn actually who I am as a person, what my core values are, and the life that I truly want to live that lights me up in the world.
That's so amazing. I love that. And your life now is something which just it's everything you do. And every time I watch you living your life, you're actually quite a private person and you don't share too much. But what you do share is about how you love to be happy and how you want to show other women to be happy and healthy and working and just having that dream life that they want without feeling like they have to burn themselves out. You know, when you talked about rebuilding yourself and saying like sort of you went to war with, you know, having to really repiece yourself. I'll never forget, someone once said to me, they came out of a divorce once and they said, it's like you're a jigsaw, and when the pieces are all scattered over the table, you get to pick the pieces that you put back together, and the ones that you don't want to put back in that jigsaw, you can leave on the table. And I love that analogy because it's so good. It's like when we do rebuild ourselves, we're still the same person, but we now get to choose those pieces of our life that we know that are so meaningful and important to really put back together. And it helps then to leave space for other pieces to come in as well that we didn't even know existed.
I love that so much.
It's so nice, isn't it? Yeah, I love that. So talk to me about where are you now? What's going on? Let's go to present day, Karly. We've gone through all the eras.
Yeah, go. Present day Karly doesn't put her business first, believe it or not.
Wow.
You know, if you look at my social media.
I need to learn this. This is why we need the power hour together.
Exactly that.
Yeah,
if you look at my social media, you know, you would think that I put my business above everything.
Yeah.
I love what I do in business. You know, as much as I say around, you know, that corporate hustling version, I've taken aspects of me in that corporate world where I just felt so at home.
Yeah.
And I got rid of all the other stuff that didn't work for me. But that's what's threaded through my business to this day.
Good.
And I am so proud that I love business. I think women really shy away from being, having a business, from succeeding in business and really making money, like good money.
It's that thing where we always like, you can have this as a side hustle, honey, but don't dream too big. Dream big. Go grab it.
And exactly that. And I think the biggest thing for me has been that you can absolutely be wildly successful, but absolutely have the best life ever. And so for me today, I am highly private. I'm a very private person. I do only you only see 5% of my life on social media. And that is because I very much value the life that I've created. And I really hold that at a high regard. And I don't feel like to be successful, you need to show everybody absolutely everything of you and what you're doing. But the people that see that 5% of me, they know me. Yeah. I have women that come onto my page and they'll be in my DMs and they're like, Karly, I feel like I've known you a lifetime. Yeah. I have clients that come to work with me and we're like best friends. And I like it like that. And the thing that I have built my business upon today is having, really the fundamental piece is, just coming on my page, like I lead with impact on everything that I do. I love to feel that deep fulfillment, that peace within. Like peace within for me is someone that, for me, I never had peace. Yeah. I didn't know what peace felt like. So now my non-negotiable is that it has to feel peaceful and fulfilling to me. And I hold that above everything else. Sure. And so for me, the way that I've built my business is a byproduct of the way that I live my life. It is infused into my life. It's not something that I'm chasing or hustling to get. It's something that I am just living my life.
You're attracting.
I am attracting.
You're attracting all the time. You're attracting.
The epitome of attraction marketing.
Yeah.
And really that is how I've built my business now, in that I'm just showing women that actually this is how you get to do it. This is how you've been taught. I've been there once. I know that world so much. And actually I've broken free and you can too. And this is how you do it. And this is what's available to you on the other side. You can absolutely make your highest income month, but having the most freedom and doing it where you feel at peace and ease and you feel light as a feather.
Oh God, I love that. We're flying around. So what does it feel like to work with you? What kind of women are coming to work with Karly?
I have women from all different industries at different stages of business. The core fundamental piece of the women that come into my world, regardless of where they are at in business, regardless of what they're doing, is that they all have the same characteristics. Okay. They are all mirrored versions of me, where they are women who play bigger than anybody else, who have the biggest dreams,
taking the risks.
They take risks and they go after what they want, and they don't take no for an answer. These are women that go all in. They're highly committed. They have I always say around visionary women and visionary, I'm a huge visionary. Even when we go back to me being in that first trainee version of me in the office and me seeing my future self, me really projecting that vision, I've always been a visionary. I just didn't understand what visionary meant. And women who want to break free, who want to live life on their own terms, who have really high values.
Have you done your vision board this year?
I've done my vision board. I have it more as a prayer board, to be honest. I have it as this, I'm a woman of faith, and I have it as a prayer board, and I did it at the beginning of this year.
Good. Love it.
I do it every year. And I really do it in a way, and that's really evolved over the years for me. And now if you look at my vision board, it is just the epitome of fun, excitement, adventure, freedom,
love it,
fulfillment, impact. And you will never find the success of what I used to have, as in the money, the cars, the houses, on a prayer board of mine.
Yeah.
Because for me, that would just come as a byproduct. And those are things that, you know, I don't need them. I like things like that,
Yeah.
you know, but I don't absolutely need them. That they will come from making an impact and doing good in the world.
But we always see that the people, you know, like you get the TikToks where they're driving around in a fast car with a Rolex on. And that is, to some people, still success. So people are buying into these people who they think are successful, but that is not success. Success is having freedom within your business. And I love that you're creating that energy and showing people this is what successfulness feels like. It's not what it looks like, it's what it feels like. And I think feeling is so important in business. I mean, we were going back to where you were saying, every day I woke up and I was like, how am I going to get through today? How many women, or, you know, women, men, any of us, how many of us get those days where we wake up and think, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to get through today. I just want to be back in this bed in like 12 hours time. And you get home and you're so tired and mentally drained, you can't connect with your partner. You can't even have the capacity to even cook yourself a dinner and that is your self-care going out the window for your business. But if you're not looking after number one, who is going to be looking after you? You know, we can't rely on others all the time. We've got to do it for ourselves, right?
And I look at those versions vastly different to me doing that to now, you know, my feet will step out of my bed. They will hit the floor and I'm like, let's go. Like, let's go. And that is the energy that I pour through my business. And the same way that, you know, I am more energized now than I ever have been in my entire life. And for me, that is what life is about. Like, I don't want to live, I want to feel alive.
Yes.
And they're vastly different things. There's living and there's feeling alive.
Yeah.
And not enough people know what feeling alive actually is. And when you feel that, you will never let that go. So your non-negotiables become so strong. Your boundaries become strong. Everything, the way that you live your life, you know, I have a structure, a structure around my life and how I live, but that's because it allows me to feel alive and to fully experience life in the way that I want to experience it.
Talking of experiences, you know what I'm going to get onto?
Yes.
Darling, what is this about you living with some monks?
I am ultra adventurous.
Yes, we know this.
You know, whether it's jumping out of a plane over Dubai Palm.
Guys, you'll never catch me doing this.
You know, or hiking a mountain.
Yeah.
My dad recently had me hiking the side of this mountain, like you wouldn't believe. We was like,
you weren't like one of those little goats where you're hanging on.
I was just about to say that. It was like two little mountain goats, and we was laughing the whole time.
Oh my goodness.
Me and my dad, that's where I get it from for sure.
Yeah.
And you know, my mum's out adventuring over Thailand at the minute, living her life.
I love it.
Early retirement, so it really threads through our family.
Sure.
So I left investment banking. I left my investment banking job. And at that point, that was when I realized what freedom was.
Sure.
And I was like, what do I do with my life? Like, what do I do? And I jumped on a plane and I went to Bali. And I was meant to go to Bali for only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
To see some friends who live out there. And I ended up staying out there for 10 months. And just absolutely living life. And then I went from Bali to the Philippines. And I was on this remote island in the Philippines with a bunch of people who I'd never met before. And it was almost this like Survivor. Have you ever seen the program Survivor?
Yes.
So it was really much like that.
We're taking it back to the 1990s now.
Really, you know, when I say I used to be materialistic, you know, I had nothing. I was backpacking in nothing for, you know, I'd never backpacked before. Me backpacking, everyone's like, Karly, you've lost the plot. Like, what's going on? And so I got rid of everything. You know, I just had
cleansed.
I completely cleansed. You know, even to the point that I stopped wearing hair extensions, stopped getting fillers done, like all of this. And I just went so natural and actually fell in love with myself.
Authenticness again.
Absolutely. And we was on this we was on this remote island, and after we finished this experience, you know, one of the girls that I met there, you know, she's one of my best friends today. She lives in Switzerland, and you just realize that actually there's so much more to life. You're in these moments and you're like, this is actually what I want to do more of.
Yeah.
And from there, we was in this coach and we was all driving back to the airport after this trip. There was like a 12-hour to get back to mainland, to get back to the airport. And I was meant to be going back to Bali. And at this point, we was going around and, you know, me being me, I'm like, right, what's everyone's big dreams for this year? Let's go around, and everyone has to share one thing that they've absolutely loved doing.
Yeah.
About this experience, you know, your highlight and low light about this experience, and what you're doing next, and play big with it. You know, of course, I've got all these strangers doing this in the back of a minibus. We haven't washed or anything in like 5 days. So we're all getting into it. And then it was my turn. And I was like, well, I'm meant to be going back to Bali, but I just don't feel like I should be going back. And Philippa, my friend now, she said to me, well, where do you want to go? Where would you go? And I was like, I've always wanted to go to Japan. And she was like, why don't you just go? And so me and her was standing at Bali airport. I booked me and her were standing at the airport in the Philippines.
Yeah.
She was going off to Cambodia. And I stood there at the airport, booked a flight, one-way ticket to Japan, and got on that flight I had bikinis, everything. I wasn't prepared. I got on that flight. And from that moment, I just felt the most liberated and freeing I've ever felt. I felt so excited. It was like this adrenaline that I had, like, I get to do whatever I want when I want. And when I got to Japan, as, you know, synchronicities happen and all of these things, when I was on the plane, I was thinking, what would I like to do in Japan? And I'd already wanted to go to the country and experience the culture. So I already had an idea. And one of those things, I was like, I would just love to live with monks, because I had read this book about a guy.
Hang on, wait, living with monks.
Living with monks.
Living with monks.
Of course. Why wouldn't you want to live with monks, you know? And it was just this pipeline dream of mine, because I read this book once. I love reading, and I read this book about this guy that went to live with monks and it changed his life. And I thought, well, I'm in Japan. Why wouldn't I want to go find some monks to live with? Of course, as you do.
Yeah.
So synchronicities happen. I ended up, you know, meeting people that met people, that someone then told me that they had been to a monastery where you could live with monks. And I was like, are you joking? That is literally on my bucket list of things to do. And so I ended up, you know, a phone call later connected me to this monastery. I think it was an 8 to 10 hour trip, me with my backpack, trains, buses, up into the mountains of Japan.
Yeah, you're like, where am I going?
Literally.
Am I going to be seen again?
And I arrived at this monastery.
No signal on the phone.
You had to turn your phones off.
No.
And so the whole time that I was there, I lived with the monks. And I had to do whatever they did, wake up when they did, eat when they did. And when I arrived, I got sat down and they said, you know, went through exactly what my living arrangements would be. You know, they sleep on a mat on a floor. I'd have to eat what they eat. And, you know, I eat an animal-based diet. So mine's predominantly meat. They do not eat meat. So it was challenging at most parts. So we're rolling with it. We're going with it. This is the experience, right? Yeah. And something that the biggest thing that shifted for me during that time was witnessing the level of service that monks, people, these are human beings who have chosen the path of to live as a monk, but as a human being would serve the world.
Yeah.
In their own unique way. And I got to be a part of that. And, you know, they would ring their bell in the morning at the crack of dawn. This bell would be rang throughout the whole premises, the whole monastery. And they would come round and knock on the door, and you'd all have to wake up, and I'd have to go sit in meditation and prayer. They taught me how to meditate and pray.
Wow.
And then we'd go to, you know, then to a fire ceremony where they would be bashing these gongs and you know, the whole experience was insane. It was you know, you have this out of body moment that, am I actually in Japan living with monks in a monastery? Like, how,
when you think of the Karly, you know, in Canary Wharf, and now she's, now look where she is and what she's up to.
doing, I had a full eat, pray, love moment.
Yes, you
know?
did. You did.
And I remember just, they had, most of the time was spent in the room.
Yeah.
If he wasn't in the room, you was serving, you was doing something. So there would be, you know, there'd be trays of food going, they'd be passing them around. And so I had a lot of time to reflect, not on my phone, and just be with my own thoughts, with my own self.
That can be hard. Being with ourselves with no distractions and actually reflecting on where we are and who we are at that moment. I find that really difficult sometimes, you know, being still with myself, because I'm so busy all the time. And sometimes I'm almost filling time because I'm not able to sit with myself. So for you to do that is incredible. And I think from learning that from, you know, was this 2018?
This was 2 years later.
2 years later. So you've now had, what, 5 years of being able to sit with that version of yourself. And there are people that don't even get to do this until sometimes, you know, they're retired.
Yeah.
And who wants that?
Yeah.
You're learning now.
And I used to sit there and really sit and think about, you know, I at this point I'd already built other businesses and launched other businesses off the back.
Yeah.
That I had at the time. And, you know, going back to when my friend passed away, at that point, I really understood what purpose was.
Yeah.
And I took that and infused that. And that's what I went and built businesses off of the back of, you know, that fundamental piece of, I'm going to make an impact in the world and really do good in the world in my own unique way.
Yeah.
And so I'd already, you know, I already had a purpose at that point and knew my purpose. But it wasn't until I went and lived with monks that I realized that my purpose got so set on fire by just being in those monks' presence, just by the way that they speak, what they speak about, their perspective of the world, their lens of the world.
Yeah.
Whereby they just serve and serve and serve and don't expect anything back in return. And these are the happiest people.
Yeah.
Like, you sit in their presence, and I was sitting in their presence just thinking, I feel happy just by sitting next to you. You don't even have to say a word. Like, monks don't say a lot. They're very, you know.
They're monks. They don't.
But just being in their presence and being present with them, I felt this level of peace and this fulfillment and this happiness that I'd never experienced before, ever. And at that point, I realized that there was so much more or different that I could live my life through not just my own personal life, but through business, in a way by which I just took my level of service to a whole new level. You know, and I thought that I was already making an impact and giving back through different avenues that I had already set up. But at that point, I was like, I can play so much bigger with this. Like, I haven't even scratched the surface of what serving actually means. And I remember I would say to this one monk, I would say to him, so what are we doing next? And he'd just say, serve. I'd go and do that, come back. You know, me rushing around, still need to learn a slower pace of life. I still need to bring myself back to that at all times. You know, I have this innate fast-pacedness about me.
Yeah.
So it's a constant, like, I notice when that's happening and pull myself back into alignment. And so for me, you know, my fast pace was at the complete other spectrum of how the monks lived.
Yeah.
And so I would go and do that quickly and then come back.
They're like, you've completed it already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's next? Serve. What's next? Serve. What's next? This was just a pattern. And then it took me a little while to realize and he didn't say anything. He would just say serve.
But he's trying to slow you down.
Yeah. And he wasn't he didn't give me the answer that I wanted.
Yeah.
He taught me in a way that I needed to be taught. And that for me was the biggest lesson. You know, he didn't just say, you're moving too fast and you're not taking the learning here.
Yeah.
He made me learn it over and over and over again until at the end of, I remember, I think it was the final night I was sitting in the room, and then it hit me. And I realized what he had been trying to do, because when I was getting up or moving or making my bed, I was moving at a slower pace. And I was like, there's no rushing the world. What am I rushing for? And I realized even, my nervous system felt calmer.
Yeah.
And I just felt this like sense
The
of
fight and flight has gone down. The cortisol is slowly coming out of the bloodstream. Yeah.
And so I realized that
food tastes nicer.
Everything's sweeter.
I know, life is sweeter when you're in that state where you're like, I can see the world for what it is now. This is real life. I'm not in like a rush around.
Yeah.
My question to you would be, how have you brought, so your experience with living with monks and just having that sense of clarity, how have you brought that into working with you? So, for any females that want to work with you, what have you brought into your, your training and your guidance to your actual mentees?
Everything that I do is you lead with impact first.
Okay. What does that mean?
I don't lead with, predominantly what I support with is helping you to scale your business.
Yeah.
But you scale your business by making an impact, i.e. you give and you will receive. And so a lot of people build their businesses off the back of, and I say this coming from a business strategist, and so I'm going to contradict myself here, but again, I pull on, zones of genius as such and weave them through my business, zones of genius from investment banking and weave them through my business in a way that works for me now. So highly strategic in the work that I do. But at the same time, I do it with the common thread through everything that I do is by serving the world first. And so when you build your business out of you're launching offers off of the back of what are going to serve other people, what truly light you up in the world, not what you think is going to make you money.
Yeah.
If you are launching an offer or building a business in a way by which if I do this, I'm going to make X amount, you are always going to be limiting and always going to be capping your amount.
Yeah.
The women that come through to me that do not lead with income, that allow themselves to truly get into their most creative, that truly launch the next offer that is going to absolutely set your heart on fire and light you up so much that you cannot stop speaking about it. So that the way that you speak about it lands with people. It is felt by your audience. When you work in a way by that, and you build a business off of that, you will attract in 10 times more people into your offers, if not 100 times more, depending on what the scale of your offer.
Sure.
And you will make 10 times more income. Income is just a byproduct of the
success
of what you give back into the world. So for me, I realized that I was always capping my ability to be successful, whatever that looks like, because I was always putting limitations on, I have to do it this way or I have to do it that way. When you come back to the point of actually, I'm going to do it in the most fun and exciting way that feels good for me, where I am just so lit up by the work that I do. I'm so in alignment. I am just on
everything
fire.
Follows through.
Everything flows through and it'll flow through 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 times bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. We all need that. So, Karly, talk to me about your activewear line. I know you had a luxury activewear line at some point. Talk me through that.
So I had a luxury activewear brand.
Yeah.
And at the early stages, before I even launched, I was taken to court by a high-profile celebrity, Robbie Williams.
Okay.
And
wow, Robbie Williams.
Hang on, Robbie Williams.
Angels.
Angels. Can't listen to that song. It's even worse that my mum loves Robbie Williams.
I don't mind him either, guys.
So I had this, I had my luxury activewear brand, and, when I was first starting out, really new to business, it was my second business, but I had never launched a product-based business, fashion business before. And there was a lot of learning curves around it. So before it was called Lenny London, it was called Florence Farrell. which is my middle name.
Okay.
And
it's my niece's name, Florence.
Oh, I love Florence so much. It's such a beautiful name.
Great.
And so I wanted to call the brand something that was personal.
Yeah.
And so I had the trademark, and you have 6 months to oppose somebody's trademark.
Right.
And within that time, you know, eager beaver, I was just like, I'm going to go full steam ahead with this business. And I'd already looked up and done my research and looked at, you know, other names. There was nothing called Florence Farrell as an activewear brand. Like, I knew who my competitors were. And so I got the website, got the designs done, invested a huge amount of money into this business. You know, if I look back, it was, you know, all of my savings from investment banking.
Wow.
Instead of going to buy a house.
You decided she wanted to, yeah. You being you, risk again.
Me being me. Big risks always. I just thought, no, I'm going to put this into my business and actually invest in myself.
Yeah.
You know, in my businesses, and I always will continue to invest in myself.
Same.
You know, we're our own biggest assets. And so I invested so much into this business from the offset. And, you know, really, you really have to understand that at the beginning of business, you don't know where to spend your money. Mm-hmm. And it has been a long lesson for me to actually understand and have these lessons to realize that these things don't require a lot of money, but actually you need to spend money on these things over here. And so with that being said, I had everything set up and had spent a huge sum of money. And one day before the 6-month mark,
I had
one day, very intentional. They know what they're doing, and I will hold this against them forever. And one day before the 6 months, I got a letter come through to say that they're opposing my trademark.
But why?
In all honesty, like I say, it's Robbie Williams. He obviously has a team. It wasn't him sitting there saying, I'm going to go after this girl and her business.
But they wanted the name.
But they didn't want me to have the name Florence Farrell because he had a menswear. So a menswear brand.
Yeah.
That was in Primark. Bearing in mind, mine's a luxury, completely different market.
Okay.
And women, mine's women, his men's.
And what's his called?
Mine's modern. His was traditional.
His was Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, exactly. And his was called Farrell something. So they didn't want me to use the name. So I had to completely get rid of the name. So I was going back and forth
with design teams.
Luckily at the time, you know, this is why it's so important to have a strong network. A friend of mine who is a lawyer was handling it for me and helping me go up against Robbie Williams. You know, I need to paint the picture here because people think that this is ultra glamorous. This was me and a couple of friends sitting at a table. We all lived together at the time.
Just trying to work this out.
Young.
When you've got a board of directors. Yeah, exactly.
Really young, pulling on all of our expertise.
Yeah.
Like, who do we know? Pulling up things, like trying to figure it out. Like, real masterminding together.
Yeah.
And do you know what? When you look back now, I'm like, that is the fun in business.
Yeah.
Like, I love that experience so much because it's like...
It's what shapes us.
It's what shapes us.
You can look back with a smile. So I know you're not adverse to setbacks, but talk to me about one of the biggest adversities you've faced as a business owner.
UPS lost £30,000 of my stock.
No.
So we had set up the...
How does this happen?
We had just about to launch the collection, had the launch party set. I had done a collaboration with KX Members Club. I had all the influencers coming. Everything was set in stone, just waiting for the products to arrive. And
the champagne was flowing, the balloons were all blown up in the room, but there's no activewear.
Ready to go. And I got one box through of the
Okay.
stock. So it had been sent in different shipments because there was so much stock.
Yeah.
And so I got one box come through. And when it arrived, I opened it. Again, you know, people need to understand how I've built my businesses off the ground up. My warehouse at the beginning, you know, it evolved into a warehouse location, had my own warehouse and workers. At the beginning, it was in my sister's garage.
Oh, God.
She has a gym in her garage. So it was in the gym with just boxes upon boxes in the corner. I would just sit there sorting them out myself and manually ticking them off, you know, as we do, as we build our businesses. And that's the beauty of it. And so the first box arrived, I opened it, and there was all of these clothing in these plastic wrappers squashed up, like scrunched up into small pieces, and everything looked like it had just been like shoved in.
Not folded.
Oh, nothing was folded neatly. It was just a mess. And I opened this box, and at that point, I just knew something was wrong.
Oh, you got that sinking feeling.
That gut-wrenching feeling. And then I messaged the factory, and they said it didn't leave us like that. And we sent all of the boxes together. You should have received them all.
You had one box.
I had one box. And then it ended up being this big investigation. Police were involved.
And what happened?
My stock never came and arrived. And through the police investigation, they found that it had ended up, I have to be very particular with my wording in this, but it had ended up being sold to an auction house. And then it ended up on eBay by third-party companies.
Wow.
And my friend actually, because all of my friends that obviously knew about it, one of my close friends used to, you know, my friends.
How much money had you lost?
I'd lost £30,000 just in the collection.
But then the launch.
Exactly. Yeah, and everything else. So, you know, in totality with Lenny London, you know, I'm looking at nearly £100,000 in terms of the whole loss through everything that happened throughout that one business.
And now when you, obviously today, and you've made, you know, you've had those mistakes in business. And I think failure is what changes us though. Every time we have something good happen, I think it's great. But actually when we've made mistakes and things have happened, it challenges us to then be, you know, a better businesswoman. And I guess that's what you can pass on as well to anyone that comes to work with you.
Yeah, and the resilience that I've built up through, you know, failures and learnings. And at the time you don't see it, but looking back now, I've had the biggest lessons in business. And the fundamental piece throughout all of it is that every single time that I thought this was it, my business was going to have to close, I pulled it back round.
Yeah.
And to God's grace alone, it's like, how does that keep happening to me when, you know, I've been hit with setbacks and obstacles and challenges.
Tough cookie girl.
And I just keep going. And people are like, how do you just keep going? And you know, I always see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I know where I'm heading. And, you know, it's part and parcel. You have to have fun with it.
You do. Karly, thank you so much for coming on today's podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And the first day I met you, I just saw your enigmatic smile, and you're such a beautiful soul. And thank you for sharing so much with our listeners. I just want to ask you just a final question. Just tell me one quote that you live by that you'd like to pass on to our listeners.
Oh, gosh. The biggest quote that I always live by is always leave people better than you found them.
Oh, I love that.
It's my WhatsApp.
Is it?
It's my WhatsApp. No, you could put a...
Yeah. Do you know what mine is? I'm probably tattooing eyebrows. Oh, great having you, my darling.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
How can we find you, Karly? Talk to me about your Instagram handle and website, etc. Tell our listeners.
The main place that you can find me, where you will see how I'm building businesses, how I'm supporting my clients, and a snippet of the behind the scenes of how I do what I do, is all through Instagram at Karly Aber.
Love that. Thank you, my darling.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.